The room was electric. It was the 2022 Oscars.
But now, let's please welcome Chris Rock.
Yes.
Pinnacle of Hollywood glamour, celebrities dressed in their finest, eagerly waiting for the night's big moments. Will Smith, one of the most beloved stars in the industry, sat next to his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. Their marriage, long held up as a beacon of Hollywood success, was on display for the world. But what no one could see was the pressure building inside of Will, the emotional weight that had been simmering beneath his calm, public-facing persona for years. As comedian Chris Rock took the stage, the energy in the room shifted. He cracked jokes, as comedians do, aiming to entertain and lighten the mood. But then came the remark that would change everything. "Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane, too. Can't wait to see it," Chris said, smiling. The joke landed. People laughed. Even Will, at first, chuckled along.
G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right?
But then his eyes shifted toward Jada. She wasn't laughing. Her face tightened, her eyes rolling in a way that only he could recognize. In that moment, the years of frustration, humiliation, and misunderstanding between them seemed to flood his mind all at once. The smile left his face, replaced by something harder, more determined. He stood up. In the split second it took for Will to walk toward Chris, it seemed like the room froze. Chris, still smiling, thought it was all part of the show.
Richard! Oh, wow!
But when Will delivered that slap, quick, sharp, and loud enough to echo through the theater, the entire world was stunned. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. "Wow," Chris Rock said.
Wow!
Stunned, but trying to keep the moment together. "Will Smith just slap the shit out of me?" The shock wasn't just Chris's. The room was frozen in disbelief. Will turned, walked back to his seat, and sat down. But his fury was far from over. "Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth," he shouted, voice shaking with a mixture of rage and hurt. Chris, still unsure how to handle the tension, responded, "It was a G.I. Jane joke, man." But Will wasn't having it. His voice grew louder, more forceful. "Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth."
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
I'm going to, okay?
The silence that followed was thick, oppressive. No one dared breathe. The Oscars had never seen anything like this before. And as the cameras zoomed in on Will, his face still filled with rage, the world began to wonder, how did it come to this? But that slap wasn't just about a joke. It was the culmination of years of pain, humiliation, and buried resentment finally erupting in front of an audience of millions. To understand the slap, you'd have to go back, way back. It was the early 1990s, and Will Smith was at the peak of his career. Starring in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will had become a household name. He was young, talented, and ambitious, determined to make a name for himself beyond television. But it was during this time that he first laid eyes on Jada Pinkett. She had auditioned for a role on The Fresh Prince, but it didn't go her way. Though she didn't get the part, she did get something much more important: Will's heart. He was instantly captivated by her confidence, her sharp wit, and her beauty. It wasn't long before he pursued her with the same determination he brought to his career. But even in the early days, there were signs. Jada was different. She didn't believe in traditional ideas of marriage or love. She told Will from the start that she wasn't the kind of woman who wanted to settle down in the typical way. But Will was too blinded by love to see these as red flags. He thought he could change her mind. He thought that his love, his success, would be enough to make her happy. He was wrong. For years, the world saw Will and Jada as the perfect couple. They walked red carpets, raised two talented children, and seemed to have it all. But behind the scenes, things were far from perfect. In 2020, the cracks that had been forming for years finally became visible to the public. Jada, always outspoken, revealed on her talk show, Red Table Talk, that she had been involved in what she called an entanglement with a younger man, the R&B singer August Alsina. She explained it calmly, as if it was just another chapter in her life. But to the world, this was a bombshell, an entanglement. That's how she described what many would simply call an affair. But it wasn't just about infidelity. It was a sign of something deeper, a marriage that had been unraveling for years while the public watched, completely unaware. For Will, it was devastating. The hurt was clear in his eyes, even as he tried to play it off. But the damage had been done. What the world didn't understand was that Will had been carrying the weight of his marriage for years. Jada never wanted to be married. She had told him that from the beginning. But Will, so afraid of failure, couldn't let go of the idea of a perfect family. He had already been divorced once, and to him, that had been the ultimate failure. He couldn't go through it again. So he clung to the idea that if he just tried harder, did more, he could make it work. He bought Jada the dream home she didn't want, threw her elaborate birthday parties she didn't care for, and continued to build the life he thought she needed. But Jada didn't want any of it. For her, marriage had been one compromise after another, each one chipping away at who she really was. She never wanted to be just Will Smith's wife. She wanted her own identity, her own freedom. But Will, blinded by his love for her, didn't see it. He kept chasing an ideal, a perfect family, a perfect career, a perfect marriage. As time went on, the cracks between them only grew deeper. By the time the 2022 Oscars rolled around, Will was carrying the weight of decades of pain and frustration. Jada's public revelations about their entanglement had embarrassed him on a global scale. Everywhere he went, people whispered. Some called him weak, others made jokes about him being manipulated by his wife. The internet had a field day with memes about their marriage, but Will never lashed out until that night. When Chris Rock made that joke about Jada, something inside Will snapped. It wasn't just the joke, it was everything. The years of suppressing his emotions, the pressure to maintain a perfect public image, the embarrassment of their private life becoming a public spectacle. That slap wasn't just about a joke, it was the breaking point for a man who had spent years trying to defend a love that was never truly his. The irony of that night was that Will was set to win the greatest honor of his career. He was nominated for Best Actor, and despite the shocking slap, he won. As he stood on stage, holding his Oscar, tears in his eyes, he spoke about love, family, and protecting the people you care about.
Now, I know to do what we do, you got to be able to take abuse. You got to be able to have people talk crazy about you. In this business, you got to be able to have people disrespecting you. And you got to smile and you got to pretend like that's okay. I want to apologize to the Academy. I want to apologize to all my fellow nominees. This is a beautiful moment, and I'm not crying for winning an award. It's not about winning an award for me. It's about being able to shine light on all of the people.
But the damage had already been done. The world wasn't talking about his win. They were talking about the slap. And for Will, the slap was more than just a moment of anger. It was years of shame, sacrifice, and a desperate attempt to protect the image he had worked so hard to create. But in that moment, as millions watched, the world saw the truth. Sometimes, even the strongest break. As the dust settled, the world began to see Will and Jada's relationship for what it was: complex, messy, and far from the perfect love story that had been sold to the public. Will's slap had revealed more than just his anger at a joke. It had exposed the cracks in their marriage, the pain they had both been carrying, and the harsh reality of trying to live up to impossible expectations. For Will, the journey of healing had just begun. The slap may have been his lowest point, but it was also a moment of clarity, a sign that something had to change. As for Jada, she continued to speak her truth, unapologetic, as always. But the world now saw them both in a different light. The fairy tale was over, and all that was left was the truth. A truth that had been hiding in plain sight all along.
Thank you for this honor. Thank you for this moment. And thank you on behalf of Richard and Oracene, the entire Williams family. Thank you. Hope the Academy invites me back. Thank you.